Hey there, it's your friend Kim De La Rosa, and this is Mindful Health Podcast, the space where we share science-backed research on how to balance mental health and wellness in your day-to-day life. And today we are going to go over how something as so small like the Rubik's Cube could create an enormous impact on your mental health and in your future in business, in relationships, and in life. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out for exploring little nuggets of truth for your wellness. I appreciate your time and attention. And if you are new here, I am a wellness writer, researcher, fitness advocate, and athlete for a number of years in a variety of different sports. And today I actually want to talk about something that's not really off topic, and like the front end, it kind of looks off topic, but I want you to stick with me on this. There are a number of things in life that we look at and we categorize as impossible. So, for example, some people will look at skiing, and they will look at a downhill slope and they see all those skiers and people coming down and with just looking so effortless. And to them, it's like, that's impossible. Landing on the moon, or going into space. That to them seems impossible. It's cool to look at, but in their current reality, they're like, that kind of seems impossible. For me, I had a number of things, but one of them that fell into the category of impossible things to do was solving a Rubik's Cube. Now, I don't know about you, but growing up, I looked at the Rubik's Cube as something that was only designed for the very, very smart people. That if you solved a Rubik's Cube, that meant you had incredible intelligence, which meant that you could literally do anything you want in the world. That was my idea of the Rubik's Cube. Not to mention, if you also look at certain films and shows, you could see that the scenes where people are doing the Rubik's Cube or they're solving the Rubik's Cube, what do you see? Majority of the time, the people or the person who solved the Rubik's Cube are categorized as above average intelligence. They were geniuses, or they had the ability to problem solve, which means that they were able to just master whatever that was thrown at them. I mean, the one scene that I could think about was The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, when he's in the cab trying to speak to one of the managers of his company about getting an internship as, a salesperson. And the manager was trying to solve the Rubik's Cube, and he was just looking so puzzled and he just couldn't solve it. And then Will Smith's character was like, I can solve it. Do you want me to solve it for you? And within that entire cab ride, he solved it. And the manager just looked at him like, whoa, because in his head, he's like, wow, this person did the impossible. He must be so ridiculously smart. I need to hire him. Right? So every time I saw a Rubik's Cube at the store, or every time I looked at someone solving it with such effortless motions and just, it's almost like they just knew how to do this, I always thought to myself, wow, that is so impossible for me. I wonder what it must feel like for someone who is that smart and that intelligent. They could just conquer anything, right? That was my whole mentality of it. And I've had this mentality on the Rubik's Cube for years. I mean, years and years and years. This was just an idea that just stuck with me and ingrained with me. And it was something that I just saw the Rubik's Cube as impossible. Then, out of just a spur of inspiration, one day I realized that I wanted to solve this. I actually wanted to figure out, am I able to do this? Because if I really asked myself the question of, this may seem impossible, but did you actually try? And the reality of it was, no, I didn't really try. I didn't even think of even trying, because I already knew Or I assumed that, well, this isn't for me. I'm not going to try because I'm never going to solve this. And for those who are unfamiliar of what a Rubik's Cube is, there are tons of different like Rubik's Cubes out there. There's a 2x2, there's one that's a triangle, there's just so many of them. But the most common design of a Rubik's Cube that people can see in like stores or anywhere like that is called the 3x3. So there are 6 sides to the Rubik's Cube. And in each side, there are 9 squares. And the whole purpose of the Rubik's Cube is you have to be able to solve each side. You have to have all the colors aligned in each side. And that is how you solve the Rubik's Cube. So it's basically like trying to figure out how to put all of these pieces in the same color, in the same format, without messing up the flow of anything else. So in the outside, it does seem impossible. But for whatever reason, honestly, I just had this inspiration to just challenge myself and say, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I remember looking at my husband, and I recall this was on Memorial Day weekend. And I knew that I was going to have time off from, work and meetings and all that stuff. So in my head, I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I am going to take the entire Memorial Day weekend and I'm just going to figure this out. Like, I'm just going to solve it. I'm just going to figure out, okay, how, and like, when am I able to do all of these things? And my husband just looked at me with this, like, sure, honey, like, go right ahead. Have at it. So that's exactly what I did. I went online. I started looking at, YouTube videos and reviews and instructions, and had all of these different information and resources on, okay, how do you solve this thing? And then I finally found the one video that I was like, all right, this one I can relate to, this one, it makes sense. So I'm going to give this a go. And I kid you not, the entire weekend I have had the Rubik, like that entire weekend, the Rubik's Cube was in my hand. Like you could just hear the clicking and like moving all of the different pieces here and there. And me just looking at the video, going back to the Rubik's Cube, trying to implement what I learned, and then going back and forth and back and forth. And it was like that for the entire weekend. And lo and behold, out of nowhere, I think it was towards the end of Memorial Day weekend, like that night of, I solved it without looking at the instructions, without looking at notes, without forgetting any like sequence or something like that. I solved it. And it blew me away because I said, whoa, did that just happen? Let me do it again. So I gave the cube to my husband and I said, listen, mess it up, take all the squares out, just put all the colors everywhere, yada, yada, and then give it to me. And then I'm going to see if I can solve it without looking at anything. And I did that to my husband like countless times. It must have been like 5 or 6 times that I was just like, here, mess this up for me so that I could like practice and yada, yada. And every single time he messed it up and he gave it to me, I got quicker, I got faster, and the cube was solved every single time. To the point where my husband even looked at me and he just smiled and said, hey, babe, that's pretty cool. Like, you learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And that moment of when he looked at me like, whoa, babe, you actually did it. It just immediately hit a spark in my brain. This was something that I had categorized as impossible, that only a select group of people could do. And here I was solving it like nothing. Here I was solving this cube that I was so anxious about, that I just put so many like labels of the people who solved this and yada, yada, all that stuff. And here I was taking a weekend to just learning stuff, implementing it, and finally completing something on my list that I never thought that I would be able to complete. And that moment right there made me realize that we as human beings, we are capable of so much that we don't even realize how much we are capable of, because we put these limitations on ourselves. We put these ideas that we're not capable of doing this. We're not capable. We're not smart enough. We're not fast enough. We're not skinny enough, or we're not big enough, or we're, not successful enough or anything to be able to accomplish whatever is in our minds. And when we have that mentality, it hinders us from growing, and it hinders us from actually giving us the freedom of trying. Because that's the thing. When it came to the Rubik's Cube, the main idea or the thought behind why I had all of these ideas and expectations and stuff on this was the fact that I didn't even try. I was just putting assumptions because I was afraid. I was afraid that if I tried it and if it didn't work, then that means that it meant that for me, that I'm a failure, that I suck at this, that I suck and that I'm a failure and there is no way that I can accomplish anything, yada, yada, yada. But I was able to move past all of those negative thoughts. I was able to move past the idea of hindering myself from growing and decided to just give it a try and just go for it. And that happens a lot in life. Sometimes we'll look at certain things that we think are, very enticing, like starting a business, or taking that luxurious vacation or going on a date with someone that you've always wanted to go on with. Sometimes our own minds and our own limits that we had set on ourselves, for years, it stops us from growing. It stops us from actually giving things a try and our brains are trying to protect us always. Our brains are like, no, don't do that because you're going to feel stupid. Or no, don't do that because you're not smart enough to do that. So just don't even bother. Don't even try. Don't even go there, yada, yada. But what if we actually did try? What if you actually gave it your time and attention? What if you actually looked at the goal that you were trying to pursue and you were able to plan it out and see, okay, what is realistic about this? At the end of the day, am I able to accomplish this? Yes. And I am here to tell you, regardless of what you desire, regardless of what your goals are, you are absolutely 100% capable of achieving it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you even wanted to be the president of the United States, you are capable of doing that. But it's also understanding the work and the time that goes into it. When I was solving the Rubik's Cube, I had to tell myself that, listen, this is going to be difficult because you've never done this before. You cannot expect yourself to solve this right out the gate. It's unrealistic. But what you can expect is learning something about this every single day. And the secret, honestly, to the Rubik's Cube is understanding algorithms and patterns. Once you memorize certain algorithms and patterns when it comes to this game, this Rubik's Cube, everything, honestly, is like a domino effect. It falls into place. So the whole purpose of practicing or at least solving the Rubik's Cube is practice, is being consistent with it, is going back to it over and over, time and time again, until you have achieved that goal, until you looked at it and say, okay, let's continue on with this. If this method isn't working, all right, let's try another method, which is exactly what I did. There are so many different versions and ways to solve the Rubik's Cube. But what I did was I found a method that was for me, that I knew that I was like, okay, I could solve this, but this is what's, I guess, easier or what makes more sense for me to solve it. And then I implemented it, I memorized it, and I did it. It's the same thing when it comes to fitness, for example. If you want to lose a certain amount of weight, you are capable of doing that. But it's also understanding the work that goes into it. Are you going to lose a certain amount of weight at 2 months? No, you're not. But with consistency and awareness of what you're eating over time, are you going to lose it? Absolutely. Yes, you are. Same thing with a career change or starting a business. Are you going to achieve a multi-million-dollar business right out the gate like Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or anything like that? No, not right out the gate. Even if you were to ask those guys, understand that it took them years of trial and error just to get them to the spot that they're in right now. And that's just because they understood that it does take work and it does take time, but that they were absolutely 100% capable of doing this. And that is what I learned from the Rubik's Cube. I had learned that if I were to just look at my dreams, If I were to just look at whatever thing that I want to accomplish, and if I set myself realistic goals and had a pep talk with myself of saying, listen, this is not impossible, but this does need some work, and this is going to take some time. But as long as you are committed to it, as long as you stay consistent with it, then you will absolutely see results and you will absolutely reach that goal. But it's coming to terms with ourselves of breaking those limits that we have in our minds, breaking those stories that we're telling ourselves that we're not good enough, or we don't have the time, or we don't have the resources or anything like that. Because all of that 9 times out of 10 is complete bullshit. You are capable of doing this. It's just, are you willing to put in the time? Are you willing to fail over and over again in order to reach that level that you want to reach? And that is a question that only you can understand and only you can answer. And if the goal is big enough, if you are more hungry for it, if this is something that you dream about, you think about over and over again, but you're just so scared of wondering whether it's going to happen, understand that yes, it can happen. Yes, you can reach that level, but it's going to take work. It's going to take practice. It's going to take time, but it will happen. So I hope this little podcast episode actually gave you some inspiration to understand that whatever you think is scary or whatever you think is impossible, it's really not. It's not scary. It's not impossible. It is there waiting for you. All you have to do is find your path. Find your path on how you are going to live out your success, live out your dreams, and just take things one step at a time. And if you like this episode or if you like the podcast, definitely make sure that you go to KimberlyDelaRosa.com and subscribe to the newsletter. If you like and have any comments or questions or anything about this, feel free to go on social media. My handle is Kim Delaro on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's all over the place. And I hope that you just live your dream. I hope you give yourself that freedom, that permission, and the courage to say, listen, if that person can do this, then I can absolutely do this. Because that, my friend, is the truth. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.